Hey guys, it's Sam, and in this video I'm going to be going over my thoughts on the Crayola watercolor pencils, and also comparing them to my experience with Loft watercolor pencils. So let's see how this one, it's a little bit ASMR-y, a little bit. Anyway, all right, let's review them. So today's stream we're going to be going over the watercolor pencils, Crayola's watercolor pencils. These aren't a new product, they're new to me, like in owning them. So it comes with 24 colors, and we're gonna give it a try, and we're gonna compare it to this. For those who've been around for a while, probably recognize this. This is the Loft all-in-one art kit. So it does come with watercolor pencils, and I reviewed them 800 years ago on stream, actually. These are the watercolor pencils. It comes with 28, so it's 4 more colors than this, but we'll see how it goes. Some of these colors are pretty similar too. Which one is truly better, Loft or Crayola? I don't think it's gonna be much of a surprise, but you never know. Okay, you never know. So these did get jumbled up in shipping, so these aren't exactly the order that these pencils came in this box. But here's a look at the box. Ooh ah. It's a little beat up. I blame the shipping. But here we go, let's have a look at the colors. So we're gonna swatch them, and then we're gonna do a little bit of coloring with them. All right, all 24 colors. Ooh, ah. All right, give me a second to put these in rainbow order. So before I get too far into this review, before I start comparing it to Loft, I do want to talk about Crayola watercolor pencils in isolation, but I also want to preface this by saying I am not a watercolor pencil artist. My experience with watercolor pencils are these two brands, literally, the Loft watercolor pencils and the Crayola watercolor pencils. I have, however, used colored pencils in the past, regular colored pencils, and slightly more professional brands of colored pencils as well, so I can kind of compare things with that experience, and also just what I would naturally expect from more higher pricey brands. But obviously, since you're working with something like Crayola or Loft, or perhaps Rose Art if they have their own watercolor pencil brand, you're not going to get the same thing. You're just not. So make sure you lower your expectations here. These are art supplies intended for children. So if you're looking for a professional kit, if you're looking for a place to start, I probably wouldn't recommend these, but I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so as far as the barrel goes, like the actual pencil in and of itself, it feels like a normal Crayola colored pencil. So if you ever used any of those kind of like cheap colored pencils, they're very light. I don't know, there's not much going on with them. They're a regular colored pencil looking watercolor pencil. In terms of pigment with the colors, in comparison to my experience with with colored pencils, you gotta, work a little bit more with the pigment here. It doesn't just kind of go onto the paper. It's not super smooth. You kind of gotta, scribble a little bit more than you probably think you would have. It's cheap. It's not going to be high quality stuff that we're working with here. In terms of color selection, they definitely have a lot of blue. A lot of blue. There's you got your choice of blue, and there's a little bit with the oranges, a little bit with the purples, and a little bit with the greens. But you got one brown, maybe two brown if you count that peach color, and you got one yellow. However, you do have two gray, 3 if you include black, so that's kind of nice. You don't usually see that sort of selection there, but this does kind of lean a little bit more on the blue side. I kind of maybe would have liked like maybe another brown or something, but I'm also biased towards brown. I really do like the color brown. Anyway, as a plane is going by, let's talk about when you add some water. So adding water, these do dissolve for the most part. For the most part, get rid of your little scritchy scratchies, and I was pretty messy with some of these, so I was a little impressed that it does for the most part smooth out. I'm sure with actual, legit brand watercolor pencils, you're going to experience complete like dissolve, like it melts away and it's beautiful, but this, you're not going to get that here. It does lighten significantly. You're going to get lift. I definitely got some lift, and it definitely like kind of what's the word, pulled around the edges kind of thing. So your edges, unless you really work your edges, they're going to get a little bit darker. But I still was pretty surprised. The blending wasn't too bad, especially when I added the water. The bottom I did the yellow, red, and blue, and when I added the water, they blended together pretty nice. I don't know, like in terms of like what your expectations are with this cheap children's brand, it's not bad. Yeah, so I guess here I'll go ahead and start to get into the comparisons and just of the swatch pages that I did, and I'll go ahead and put those on screen as well because the difference here is quite stark. So the Artist Loft, if you didn't see that, I also did a dedicated Artist Loft watercolor pencil review video if you want to see more information on that. But here, just to compare these two brands, the barrel itself first for the watercolor Artist Loft pencils is a hexagon, but it's still just, I don't know, it didn't really bother me to hold it, but I'm sure probably more long term either way, it's going to end up hurting my thumbs. So that's just how colored pencil works. I don't use colored pencils for a reason. It hurts my hand and my wrist. The dissolving factor for Artist Loft is effectively non-existent. You basically still see all of your pencil strokes. It's definitely less pigmented, and you cannot layer, is the TLDR there of the Artist Loft. The Crayola, however, is a slightly different story. It does seem to dissolve for the most part. You definitely still have some of that underlying scritchy scratch visible, but it does for the most part dissolve. It does for the most part blend. It does for the most part have some pigment to it. And you kind of can layer. The layering was a little complicated. I did this live on stream, so I didn't really have the time dedicated to just letting the paper dry. But for the Artist Loft, I did do like a separate picture where I tried to let it dry and I just literally could not layer. I could not add anything on top. No matter how I tried. I had the same problem with the colored pencils, which, by the way, if you want to see my Artist Loft colored pencil review, I also did the regular colored pencil review. But for the Crayola, I noticed that there was a similar thing happening where I just could not color on top of something that I already added water to. But I did realize off stream that given enough time, you really let the paper dry, you can go back over it and add some layers. But, you know, for a child, that's just not gonna happen. They want to draw now. And to be fair, I empathize with that. So ain't nobody got time to wait, okay? So if you're patient and you need to layer and you're gonna use these watercolor pencils, you're gonna have to wait to do any sort of layering. But in terms of the actual drawings that I did, the landscapes that I tested out, it's definitely more pigmented. To be fair, I did use different papers, but either way, like, it's definitely more pigmented. I definitely got more punchy color, and eventually I could end up adding more layers, and I could get dark. Like, oh my god, Artist Loft, please, please, we need to be able to go darker, man. I can't get over how many, like, that I use the black with Artist Loft and there's literally nothing. Like, it's just, like, is there anything there? I can't see anything. But with the Crayola colored pencils, when I did go back and do the drawing just by myself, I didn't record it. I did go back and I did layer, and I could get dark, and I used, excuse me, I used the brown. You can see it. You can see that there's trees there. So in terms of, like, being able to go darker, being able to see more color, have a little bit more depth and vibrancy. And of course, if I spent more time on these, I probably could have gotten a much better result. But for Artist Loft, I can't say that. Like, I don't feel confident saying, like, oh, if I spent more time on the Artist Loft pictures, like, it would have turned out better. Like, maybe a little bit better, but there's a point where the tool is just gonna stop you. But I feel more confident saying that with the Crayola watercolor pencils, that if I spent more time on it, I really could have gotten something better. I still think you're gonna be limited in a lot of ways with this, just because, you know, it's got some fallback. You know, it doesn't go down super smooth. It's not, you know, the most pigmented. It doesn't completely dissolve, sort of thing. You gotta wait for the layers. You can't just kind of, you know, keep working kind of thing. So I feel like if I were to have used more expensive, nicer quality watercolor pencils, I would have had a much easier time. I probably also could have gotten a sharper point. I felt like it was sort of difficult to get thin. Actually, I found this with the Artist Loft too. Like, getting those thin lines, I really couldn't seem to do that. Yeah, so getting a sharp point, I couldn't really get a sharp point. But in terms of, like, if you're just wanting to get into the medium and you have no experience and you don't want to spend any money and you're like, I just want to be completely uninvested in this hobby, then if I had to pick between the two, 120 billion% go with Crayola. Like, never use Artist Loft unless you really want to. Like, I'd probably actually, as much as I hated the Artist Loft markers, their alcohol marker brand, as much as how bad they were, it was kind of fun to just have this trash marker that you could just obliterate and not have to worry about. So if you want something like that, the Crayola is still not bad in terms of price either, and you get more quality out of it. But if you just want to destroy a brand because that's just what you're into, Artist Loft might be the better route. You're just not really going to see anything that you tried to draw to destroy it with. Because there's no pigment. Anyway, but yes, I do say that the Crayola watercolor pencils are a nice brand. You know, I'm ignorant of a lot of this stuff, but I'm sure there's probably other brands that you could try out first. But if you're really uncertain, you're really not sure, and you're like, oh, I don't even know if I really like color pencil stuff. I don't know if I really like watercolor stuff, kind of thing. Like, you're really, really uncertain. I don't think this is like the worst decision you could make. You know, there might be other sort of like student grade watercolor pencils out there that you could try. That's not like going to break the bank kind of thing. That would probably give you a better experience and a better idea of what you're going to be getting yourself into if you're just kind of getting into this. Yeah, so Crayola is not awful for what it is. Like, you need to remember, this is a cheap product for children. If you keep that in mind, then this product isn't bad, IMO. But yeah, so if you've tried out Crayola watercolor pencils, let me know how your experience was in the comments down below. And if you know of any, like, you know, alternative cheap student grade watercolor pencil brands out there that somebody may want to get into or that you had a really good experience with, definitely share in the comments down below, because I do not know anything about watercolor pencils, so don't take advice from me. But yeah, so definitely leave any like tips or any brands that you like in the comments down below, and let me know how your experiences went with these. And yeah, if you have any other sort of like videos you'd like to see from me, I don't know, feel free to let me know in the comments down below too. And if you'd like to see me do more of these sort of artsy experiments or artsy things, I do live stream on Twitch, which is where I did this whole experiment. So feel free to follow me. I'll put a link to that in the description down below. And if you'd like more art tips, feel free to subscribe. I don't update here on YouTube too often, but you know, I do post on Twitter and on Patreon. And now I'm apparently on TikTok, so I did maybe TikTok a little bit. I don't know. We don't know yet. But yeah, so thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. And that's my review. Okie dokie, I'm gonna go now. So thanks for watching. Okay, bye.